Picture this, it's 9:47 p.m. and that report that you've been working on all week is due tomorrow morning. You've been staring at the same screen for 20 minutes. You can feel the headache coming on, your eyes are drooping, but there are still 40 pages to review, 6 citations missing, and 3 partners who are waiting for an update. You already know that the client in question has already spent over $1 million on this project, so you can really feel the pressure. What do? Perhaps you open ChatGPT. Just for a couple of citations, just to save a little bit of time. It's fine. A few seconds later, the references appear. Perfect. Academic paper titles, author names, it's all formatted correctly. It's looking super, super real. So you copy them into the report. And you wake up tomorrow and you've got a glossy report ready to go straight up to the boss. It gets submitted, the $1 million invoice is paid, and the government, who is the client, publishes the findings. Everyone moves on. Job's a good one. Well, it turns out that that's not actually what happens when your report is being made to shape government policy. These citations are getting checked, and your little ChatGPT session is going to make headlines. This isn't a hypothetical situation, although it does sound like a horror story. But actually in late 2025, Deloitte came under scrutiny after a Canadian government report worth approximately $1.6 million, which is insane, was found to contain citations that appeared to reference completely made up research papers. But the long story short is that doesn't cut it anymore, and this is exactly why governments, researchers, and writers themselves are starting to get nervous. Using AI to write a blog is one thing, but when you start to use AI to write $1 million reports and it starts making up evidence, then that's a very different conversation. It's time for regulation. That's where the EU AI Act comes in. In this video, I'm going to break down what the Act is, and if you're a business owner and a writer, what you need to do right now to make sure that you're compliant. I think this is the first time that we see regulation in the copywriting space that is related to AI. So you need to be caught up, right? Because huge fines are at stake. My name is 𝗧𝗛𝗣𝗬. I am the founder of 𝗪𝗢𝗥𝗡𝗚, which is a content agency, and we serve clients in the UK and the US, and a couple in the EU too. I actually studied to be a lawyer before my lucrative career in copywriting and content. So this already was quite interesting to me and already quite an interesting topic. Right now, there is a specific part of the EU AI Act that every small business and every copywriter using AI needs to understand. And it is Article 50, Section 4. And if you're not complying with it, you could be facing fines, legal issue, and damage to your reputation. So let's get started with the basics. The EU AI Act is a comprehensive regulation. It was first published in July the 1st, 2025, but it actually comes into full force in August of 2026. And the EU put this together to manage the risks of artificial intelligence and to make sure that AI systems are safe, transparent, and ethical. Now, there's loads to the Act, but the thing that I want to focus on the most in this video is about content specifically, and that is Article 50, Section 4. And it specifically addresses this section, transparency and disclosure for AI-generated content, including audio, video, and text generation. So it reads, deployers of an AI system that generates or manipulates text, which is published with the purpose of informing the public on matters of public interest, shall disclose that the text has been artificially generated or manipulated. This obligation shall not apply when the use is authorized by law to detect, prevent, investigate, or prosecute criminal offenses, or where the AI-generated content has undergone a process of human review or editorial control, and where a natural or legal person holds editorial responsibility for the publication of the content. This is what it says in plain English. If you're using AI to generate content that is intended to influence human behavior or decision making, you must say that that content was created using AI. Now, this applies to a lot of things: AI generated images, text, and videos, and even AI generated audio. Article 50, Section 4 requires you to tell people that it was created with AI, really, really clearly. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so I just added a disclaimer, right? And it just says it created with AI and I am good to go. Well, not quite, okay? Because the regulation is actually a little bit more nuanced than that, depending on the type of product that you're talking about. Let's take a look. The regulation that we've looked at here actually has two distinct parts. The first part is about deepfakes. So if you're deploying an AI system that generates or manipulates image, audio, or video, that constitutes a deepfake. So you must disclose that the content has been artificially generated or manipulated in whatever way that it was. There are some exceptions here. So if you're using AI deepfakes for artistic, creative, satirical, or fictional purposes, then you only need to disclose that the content exists. You don't need to ruin the experience by slapping some sort of hideous disclaimer on it or warnings all over it. And if you're using AI detection tools for law enforcement purposes, you're safe. However, if you are deploying an AI system that generates or manipulates text with the purpose of informing the public on matters of public interest, you must disclose that the text has been artificially generated or manipulated. So if you're not, in law enforcement and you're not creating this for creative, fictional, satirical purposes, is it in the matter of the public interest that you've created that piece of content? For us right now, I would probably say that there's a really broad scope to what that means, public interest. But in the meantime, there's another aspect to that bit of regulation where it gets really interesting, because there's a massive exemption that is built right into the regulation. This right here is the loophole. Okay, this is super, super important. It's actually the key to understanding how to stay compliant while still using AI in your content strategy at scale. So Article 50, Section 4 says that if AI generated text has undergone human review or editorial control, and if a natural or legal person holds editorial responsibility for the publication, then you don't have to disclose that it was AI generated. First, a human review or editorial control. What does that actually mean? So it doesn't mean a human just glances at it and goes, okay, looks like a blog to me. It means that a human actually reviews the content and checks it for accuracy. Checks it for tone and business facts, the accuracy of that. Does it align with your brand? Does it fit in with your content plan? And crucially, editing doesn't just mean looking at something. It also means making edits as appropriate. So in my interpretation here, it's a bit of a difference between a human going, boom, yeah, like rubber stamping AI content, yeah, all right, this looks fine. And a human actually engaging with the content, editing it, changing it, and taking responsibility. I've reviewed this content, I've edited it, and I am responsible. This is typically a person or an organization that has editorial authority already in your business, okay? So perhaps a publisher, a content manager, an agency, someone who has the authority to decide what gets published and what doesn't. So here's how this might work in practice for your business. Use AI to generate a first draft of a blog post or an article. Then a human editor reviews it, fact checks it, rewrites sections that don't sound right, make sure that it aligns with your brand. And then the editor signs off on it and publishes it. In this scenario, you do not have to disclose that AI was used because it's undergone a process of human review and editorial control. But there's a little bit of a catch, right? The human review has to be genuine. It can't just be performative. So if you're just using AI to generate content and then hitting publish with minimal changes, you're not meeting the threshold of human review. The human review exception, however, it does mean that you can still continue to use AI at scale without constantly disclosing it and ruining the UX of your website by plastering AI disclaimers everywhere. You just have to have a proper human review process in place and have it documented and have it visible for people who might order you. I actually think that that's a really good thing because you can still leverage AI for speed and efficiency, but you can remain compliant and keep that quality that your business needs in your content strategy. Let me say that you're an e-commerce brand, and if you have 1,000 products and you need product descriptions for all of them, then it's really tempting to go to AI and leverage AI. Now, traditionally here, you would hire a copywriter to write all of the 1,000 descriptions. And now, of course, AI is used to generate these product descriptions. But if you only use them to generate those thousands of product descriptions, you would still have to disclose that they were AI generated. So this is where actually you might still need to bring in a human editor now. And that human editor would review each and every one of those product descriptions and make sure that they are factually correct, that they adhere to the product spec, that they are written well and understandable. All of these things, then you're okay. You've undergone the process of the human review, and so you don't need that disclaimer that you don't really want to put on that product page. So there are ways around it, which is good. I would say though, that if you don't have the staff to do that in-house, this is where a content agency actually becomes really valuable, because an agency can set up the systems and processes to ensure that a human review is happening consistently and meaningfully at every product description. In fact, we already do that right now in-house for all of our clients. So none of our clients are going to need to put these disclaimers, because we have a documented human review process that we could provide as evidence for them in an audit. What I've said to you today is not legal advice, it's just an interpretation of the law. And we might see as the case law develops that these things might change and the definitions of those things might change. But what is important is to know that AI regulation is coming. And the best, most forward-thinking businesses right now are thinking about that. They're thinking, how can I build AI workflows right now that mean that they're still going to be compliant when regulation comes in later this year, next year, the year after, in the next few years. However, there are still some grey areas right now that are not going to be resolved over the next few years. And one of those things is in Article 50, Section 4. It mentions that it applies to content that is intended to influence human behavior or decision making. But what does that mean exactly? Does it apply to internal content? So if you're using AI to write internal memos or emails, do you have to disclose that you use AI in that way? Does it apply to content that is heavily edited by a human? If you use AI to generate a first draft, do you still have to at all think about that, or would that not even worry you at all? Does it apply to content that is used for training or research purposes? So if you're using AI generated content for internal courses, do you have to disclose that? I don't know. These are just questions that I'm sort of thinking about when I was thinking about this regulation and how it would impact the projects that I'm currently working on. Even within this time frame, the regulation was written and the technology has advanced far further than the regulation has been able to. So this regulation was written for AI sort of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. And we're so far past it. Every week it seems that there's another development in AI. So how will that look? How will this regulation stand up to tests of future content where actually it might be indistinguishable that a human has written this or edited this content? Again, I don't know. All that we know right now is that if you are publishing AI generated content to the public, and that content is intended to influence behavior or decisions, perhaps in marketing, you should disclose that it was created with AI. If you're in a grey area, obviously the safest approach is to err on the side of transparency and caution, and then disclose that you used AI. It is so much better to be over compliant than under compliant, especially when fines are this large. Right now, a fine for non-compliance is 35 million euros, or 7% of a company's global annual revenue. Scary numbers. Why does the EU even care? If we use AI to create content, why have they decided to step in right now? And of course, the answer is transparency and consumer trust. The EU is concerned, and I think that on a certain level we all are, even if you are using AI in your day-to-day world, probably had a couple of moments where you're like, wow, this technology is incredibly powerful. We might need to understand how to use this a little bit more responsibly. Some of my concerns revolve around misinformation and specifically about people being manipulated by content that they don't necessarily realize was created by a machine. I think also we are right to be concerned about hallucinations, things that aren't even true appearing and presented in a fact or a decision-based way. The regulation really is designed to protect consumers and maintain trust in the media and content. And at the moment, I do think that we are at an all-time low of that type of trust in our society. So it is really important that we start to build that up again and we start to make AI content visible when it is used. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, this is all well and good and maybe a little bit scary, but I'm based in the UK or I'm based in the US. Like, what do I care about EU regulation? Well, unfortunately, the EU regulation applies to any business that is selling products or services to customers in the EU. Even if you are not in the EU, even if your business is registered in the United States or in the UK, then you sell products to a European consumer, you are subject to EU law. And this is called the extraterritorial application of the law. So if you're doing any type of business in Europe, then you do have to follow European regulation and rules. So if you have a website and that website ships to the EU or offers services, whatever, you then need to disclose any full AI generated content on your website very clearly, or you need to have in place internal systems where you have a human review and a natural person that is editorially responsible. And that might mean a great opportunity to work with a content agency. So what does this mean for your business? Let's talk a little bit about your action plan. Okay, first, I want you to audit your content. So that means going through your website, your social media, your marketing materials, and identifying any content that was created wholly with AI. So that includes blog posts that were written by ChatGPT, product descriptions, if you've got them, social media posts created with AI writing tools, images, videos, audio, if you've got anything like that, you need to understand where that is in your content, in your content strategy, in your content plan, and you need to understand what was the review process for that. So when you've used something, you've created something with AI, you need to mark it and understand it. And then if it is just AI generated, I would suggest adding a clear disclosure somewhere that states that it was created using AI. So that could be a note at the top of the article, it could be a caption under the image, it could even be like a disclaimer in your video description, whatever it is. It needs to be clear, prominent, and easy to find. So just including that somewhere covers your back. I would also use this opportunity to update your privacy policy and your terms of service and add some language or a bit of description there and how you use AI in your content creation. Explain what data you use to feed your AI models and what you're disclosing and how you're disclosing AI generated content. And this just shows your customers that you're being transparent and obviously leaves a bit of a paper trail if you did ever get into trouble later on. Going forward, I want you to really think about your content strategy. So you need to decide how much AI are you going to use in your content and how are you going to disclose it? Or are you going to change your internal systems so that you need to avoid those disclosures? Some people are choosing to use AI for certain types of content like social media, but then not for others, perhaps like blog posts or white paper posts. Some are choosing to use AI as a tool to speed up the writing process, but they still have a human team writing the final version, in which case, brilliant. It all really depends on your business, your bottom line, and your customers. But the key is to be really intentional about it. So don't just use AI because it's fast and easy. Instead, I really want you to think about how it affects your brand, your customers, and your legal compliance. The EU AI Act is just the beginning of regulation that's coming, and it covers a lot more than just transparency and disclosures in content. I just chose one section to talk about today, but it also covers things like bias, safety, accountability, and a whole lot more. So as AI becomes more integrated into businesses, we're gonna start to see more regulation and we're gonna have to jump through a few more hoops and hurdles to make sure that we're staying compliant. Start thinking about that right now. If you want to dive deeper into Article 50, Section 4 of the EU AI Act, then I have put a list of further reading resources in the description box below, so feel free to check them out. If you found this video helpful, then make sure that you subscribe because I share insights on AI, content writing, and growing a content business every single week. See you in the next video.